Okay, everybody, we're going to do an ed puzzle on genocide, what it is, so we can understand what exactly it fully is, and you're going to want to be taking notes. So you want to get a piece of paper out, and you're going to be not only answering questions in the ed puzzle, but also taking notes on the different stages of genocide, because you're going to need to know this for your research project, because you will be going over these stages and analyzing your chosen genocide or historical event that has elements of genocide. You're going to need to be able to talk about, how it qualifies and what happened during your presentation. So let's get started. So the first question is, what is genocide? So in the chat box, please type, what do you know about genocide before I hit play? What is it that you understand about what it is exactly? Okay, now that you've typed that, let's listen to this definition. Here we go.
There are many kinds of crimes. Genocide is unlike any of them. But what exactly is genocide? And can anything be done to finally prevent it? As defined under international law, genocide is the deliberate and systematic destruction, in whole or in part, of a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, genocide is not random acts of deranged individuals. Genocide usually requires careful planning, significant resources, and the cooperation of hundreds, thousands, or even millions of people to commit the crime. The largest genocide in history, the Holocaust, took place between 1941 and 1945. The Nazis, led by Adolf Hitler, murdered 6 million innocent Jewish men, women, and children, 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. Astoundingly, during this period, millions of German people and many of their allies were cooperative, complicit, or complacent about this historic horror. This includes doctors, nurses, business leaders, politicians, scientists, engineers, filmmakers, entertainers, construction workers, and people from virtually every part of society. In an attempt to ensure genocide never happens again, a Polish Jewish lawyer named Raphael Lemkin, who lost 49 relatives in the Holocaust, coined the term genocide in 1944 and championed the effort to have genocide recognized as a crime under international law. Thanks in large part to Lemkin's efforts, the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide in 1948. But genocide continued to occur. In 1994, in Rwanda, the Hutus led a massacre of up to 1 million of their fellow citizens, the Tutsi, with Hutus often killing their neighbors in their homes, churches, and schools, and raping an estimated 250,000 to 500,000 women. The following year, another genocide occurred. In Bosnia, thousands of Muslim men and boys were slaughtered, and more than 20,000 women and children were forcibly transferred from their homes. Then, in 2003, another genocide began, in Darfur. It's been estimated that more than 1 million children from 3 tribes were killed, raped, wounded, displaced, traumatized, or endured the loss of parents and families during this genocide. Beginning in 2017, in Myanmar, more than 700,000 Rohingya Muslims fled the country after ethnic cleansing began, in a genocide which has killed up to 43,000 people. Today, the Myanmar government still refuses to allow independent investigators access to their state and has punished local journalists for reporting these abuses. Now, after generations of death and destruction, we must consider how genocide occurs and what can be done about it. No one individual can stop genocide by themselves, but together it can be avoided. Genocide is one of the gravest of all crimes. People commit it together, people can stop it.
Okay, so now that you've watched that video, tell me something that you've learned about genocide that you didn't know before. All right, so these are some of the questions I would like you guys to be thinking about as we're doing this project. Do we have a responsibility to stop horrors like responsibility? What would they be if we do? And if we do have a responsibility to stop, how can we stop it? And if we can stop it, what is the nature of our responsibility, basically? So do we have a responsibility to stop horrors like genocide? What is the nature of that responsibility? And with that, how can we stop it? Please answer those in the chat box. And now, if it's not ours, whose responsibility is it? So some of the essential questions for this unit is going to be, how does conflict affect communities, both local and global, as well as interpersonal relationships? In other words, how does conflict affect everybody, and in what ways? And what responsibility does a society have for what it creates, both the good stuff and the bad stuff? And how does literature explore human rights in a global society? And how do authors use language to influence their audience? And this is something we're going to be moving into as we start our rhetoric unit soon, about how people are able to shape their words to affect the world. And that's called rhetoric. We'll be looking at that over the next couple months. And here's the biggie. What are the consequences for either choosing or refusing to interact with one society? So the Genocide Research Project, we've talked about this a little bit, and that we're going to be doing a research-based video essay, right, about a specific genocide that your group chooses to look into. Not the Holocaust, because we're going to talk about the Holocaust in class and through night and through your history class. It's important. It is primarily a major genocide that we all need to learn about, but we will together. What I want is for you guys to add to that understanding that the Holocaust was not the only one, and that it's still a problem and has been for who knows how long. And of course, we're going to be looking at the Holocaust specifically through night, and we're going to be talking about that through our 3 Socratic seminars that we talked about on Friday, February 21st. Okay, now to further understand what genocide is, because that introductory video was just very briefly talking about it, there are 10 stages to genocide. Okay, I'm going to show you guys short little videos, and I want you guys to answer these questions in the chat box after each little video in the chat box. And you need to be taking notes on these 10 stages, because you will be applying your research to what were the 10 stages for your genocide. Were any missing? Was it truly a genocide, or was it like an almost genocide, and that kind of stuff, and what led to the genocide, and where could we have stopped it, especially in the earlier stages, if we were, if we had the power to do so, what could have been done? All right, so the questions here: what are the elements of this stage? How can we prevent it? All right, and so let's hit the first one. And the first stage is called classification. Let's watch and take notes on what are the elements of this first stage of the classification stage of genocide. Now, just because this happens doesn't mean a genocide happens. Just I want you to understand that. Okay, none of these are sufficient, right? But they tend to follow these stages. So here's stage one.
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventive measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Classification is the first stage. All cultures have categories to distinguish people into us and them by ethnicity, race, religion, or nationality. Bipolar societies that lack mixed categories, such as Rwanda and Burundi, are the most likely to have genocide. One of the most important classifications in the current nation-state system is citizenship in a nationality. Removal or denial of a group's citizenship is a legal way to deny the group's civil and human rights. Native Americans were not granted citizenship in the USA until 1924, after centuries of genocide that decimated their populations. The first step for the genocide of Jews and Roma in Nazi Germany were the laws to strip them of their German citizenship. Burma's 1982 citizenship law classified Rohingyas out of national citizenship. In India, the Citizenship Act denies a route to citizenship for Muslim refugees. We can prevent the harmful effects of classification by developing institutions that transcend ethnic or racial divisions. We must actively promote tolerance and understanding and develop classifications that transcend divisions. Follow Genocide Watch's 10 Stages campaign on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
All right, so in the text box, what are the elements of the stage? And are there any ways we can prevent this from happening in our society to prevent people from losing their citizenship? Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay. So here's the next question, though. Do you see any evidence of this stage in the United States now? It may or may not be here, okay? I'm not saying genocide's happening, but are there any warning signs? And I'm not saying there is or there aren't, but if you know of any, please list that in the box if you've noticed anything. If you haven't, just explain how you have not seen that. And how you know that that's not going on, I guess. All right, so stage 2 is called symbolization, okay? And this is the second stage. Again, what are the elements of this stage? How can we prevent it? Make sure you're taking notes as you watch the video. And be prepared to answer that question in the box after it.
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventive measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Symbolization is the second stage. We give names or other symbols to classifications. We assign names to people, distinguish them by colours or dress, and apply the symbols to members of groups. Classification and symbolization are universally human and do not necessarily result in genocide unless they lead to dehumanization. When combined with hatred, symbols may be forced upon unwilling members of pariah groups. The Nazis used the yellow Star of David to symbolize and single out Jews. The Khmer Rouge forced people from the eastern zone of Cambodia to wear blue scarves to identify them. In Rwanda, ID cards distinguishing Tutsis, Hutus, and Twas by ethnicity were used during the genocide to identify Tutsis and Twas for extermination. To combat symbolization, hate symbols can be legally forbidden, such as swastikas, as can hate speech. The problem is that legal limitations will fail if unsupported by popular cultural enforcement. If widely supported, however, denial of symbolization can be powerful, as it was in Bulgaria in the 1940s when the population protested anti-Semitic laws. At least 80% of Jews did not wear the yellow stars, depriving the yellow star of its significance as a Nazi symbol for the discrimination of Jews. As a result of widespread dissent, Bulgarian Jews were not deported. Bulgaria was the only country in Eastern Europe whose Jewish population remained the same throughout the Holocaust. Follow Genocide Watch's 10 Stages campaign on our Twitter, Instagram.
Okay, so again, what are the elements of this stage and how was it prevented in Bulgaria in the example? And do you guys see any evidence of this stage in the United States anywhere? I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but do you notice anything? If so, please add those details in the chat box. All right, stage 3 is discrimination. And again, take notes. What are the elements of this stage? How can we prevent it? Be prepared to answer that.
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventative measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Discrimination is the third stage. A dominant group uses law, custom, and political power to deny the rights of other groups. The powerless group may not be accorded full civil rights, voting rights, or even citizenship. The dominant group is driven by an exclusionary ideology that deprives less powerful groups of their rights. The ideology advocates monopolization or expansion of power by the dominant group. It legitimizes the victimization of weaker groups. Advocates of exclusionary ideologies are often charismatic, expressing the resentments of their followers. One example of discrimination is the Nuremberg Laws in 1935 Nazi Germany, which stripped Jews of their German citizenship and prohibited their employment by the government and by universities. Discrimination against Native Americans and African Americans was enshrined in the U.S. Constitution until the post-Civil War amendments and mid-20th century laws to enforce them. Denial of citizenship to the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar led to genocide in 2017 and the displacement of over 1 million refugees. Prevention against discrimination means advocating for full political empowerment and citizenship rights for all groups in a society. Discrimination on the basis of nationality, ethnicity, race, or religion should be outlawed. Individuals should have the right to protest and sue the state, corporations, and other individuals if their rights are violated. Follow Genocide Watch's 10 Stages campaign.
Okay, please put in the chat box, what are the elements of this stage and how is it preventable? And again, do you guys see any evidence of this stage in the United States now? I'm not saying it is or it isn't there, but if you have noticed any, please explain in the chat box of what you've seen. All right, stage 4 is dehumanization. Again, take notes on the outline that I provided you. What are the elements of this stage and how can we prevent it? Be ready to share out in the chat box.
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventative measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Dehumanization is the 4th stage. When dehumanization occurs, one group denies the humanity of the other group. Members of it are equated with animals, vermin, insects, or diseases. Dehumanization overcomes the normal human revulsion against murder. At this stage, hate propaganda in print, on hate radios, and in social media is used to vilify the victim group. It may even be incorporated into school textbooks. Indoctrination paves the way for incitement. The majority group is taught to regard the other group as less than human and even alien to their society. They are indoctrinated to believe that we are better off without them. The powerless group can become so depersonalized that they are actually given numbers rather than names, as Jews were during the Holocaust. In Rwanda, Tutsis were dehumanized and referred to as Inyenzi, cockroach, or Inzoka, snake, to evoke the notion that they were vile, dirty, and needed to be killed. In Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbs viewed Bosniaks, Bosnian Muslims, as the other. In Srebrenica, Serbs arbitrarily killed 8,372 Bosniak men because of their Muslim identity. To combat dehumanization, incitement to genocide should not be confused with protected speech. Genocidal societies lack constitutional protection for hate speech and should be treated differently than democracies. Local and international leaders should condemn the use of hate speech and make it culturally unacceptable. Leaders who incite genocide should be prosecuted in national courts. Radio stations that promote hate speech should be jammed or shut down. Hate propaganda and its sources should be banned from social media and the internet. Follow Genocide Watch's 10 Stages campaign.
Okay, so what are the elements of this stage? And what are ways to help prevent it or combat it? All right, and do you see any evidence of this stage in the United States now? Again, not saying it is or it isn't, but do you see any dehumanization happening? Please explain in the chat box. All right, now we're on to stage 5, about to be halfway done. Stage 5 is organization. All right, again, what are the elements of the stage? How can we prevent it?
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventative measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Organization is the 5th stage. Genocide is always organized, usually by the state, often using militias to provide deniability of state responsibility, like the Janjaweed in Darfur. Sometimes, organization is informal, like Hindu mobs led by local RSS militants, or decentralized, for example, terrorist groups. Special army units or militias are often trained and armed. Plans are made for genocidal killings. Genocide often occurs during civil or international wars. Arms flows to states and militias, even in violation of UN arms embargoes, facilitate acts of genocide. States organise secret police to spy on, arrest, torture, and murder people suspected of opposition to political leaders. Motivations for targeting a group are indoctrinated through mass media and special training for murderous militias, death squads, and special army killing units, like the Nazi Einsatzgruppen, which murdered 1.5 million Jews in Eastern Europe. To combat organisation, membership in genocidal militias should be outlawed. Their leaders should be denied visas for foreign travel and their foreign assets frozen. The UN should impose arms embargoes on governments and citizens of countries involved in genocidal massacres, and create commissions to investigate violations, as was done in post-genocide Rwanda. National legal systems should prosecute and disarm groups that plan and commit hate crimes. Follow Genocide Watch's 10 Stages campaign on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
So again, in the chat box, please answer the questions. And again, do you see any evidence of this stage in the United States now? And if not, anywhere in the world that you know of? If not, just explain how you haven't. But if you have, explain the details of what you have seen. All right, stage 6 is polarization. Again, what are the elements of the stage? How can we prevent it? Make sure to take notes as you watch.
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventive measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Polarization is the 6th stage. During polarization, extremists work to drive groups apart. Hate groups broadcast polarizing propaganda. Laws may forbid intermarriage or social interaction. Extremists use terror tactics to target moderates, intimidating and silencing the center. Moderates from the perpetrator's own group are most able to stop genocide, so they are the first to be arrested and killed, such as Prime Minister Agathe in Rwanda. Leaders in targeted groups are the next to be arrested and murdered. The dominant group passes emergency laws or decrees that grants them total power over the targeted group. The laws erode fundamental civil rights and liberties. Targeted groups are disarmed to make them incapable of self-defense and to ensure that the dominant group has total control. Prevention may mean security protection for moderate leaders or assistance to human rights groups. Assets of extremists should be seized and visas for international travel denied to them. Coup d'etats by extremists should be opposed by international sanctions or regional isolation of extremist leaders. Vigorous objections should be raised to the arrests of members of opposition groups. If necessary, targeted groups should be armed to defend themselves. National government leaders should denounce polarizing hate speech, and educators should teach tolerance. Follow Genocide Watch's 10 Stages campaign on our
Okay. So please answer the questions in the chat box.
Twitter.
All right, again, do you see any evidence of this stage in the United States anywhere? And if not, anywhere else in the world? Please explain what you have noticed, and if you haven't noticed anything, just explain that you have not. All right, stage 7 is preparation. All right, so what are the elements of this stage? How can we prevent it? Make sure to take notes and be ready to answer.
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventative measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Preparation is the 7th stage. National or perpetrator group leaders plan the final solution to the Jewish, Armenian, Tutsi, or other targeted group question. They often use euphemisms to cloak their intentions, such as referring to their goals as ethnic cleansing, purification, or counter-terrorism. They build armies, buy weapons, and train their troops and militias. They indoctrinate the populace with fear of the victim group. Leaders often claim that if we don't kill them, they will kill us, disguising genocide as self-defense. There is a sudden increase in inflammatory rhetoric and hate propaganda with the objective of creating fear of the other group. Political processes such as peace accords that threaten the dominance of the ruling group through elections or prosecution for corruption may actually trigger genocide. Prevention of preparation may include arms embargoes and commissions to enforce them. It should include prosecution of incitement and conspiracy to commit genocide, both crimes under Article 3 of the Genocide Convention. National law enforcement authorities should arrest and prosecute leaders of groups planning genocidal massacres. Follow Genocide Watch's 10
All right, answer the question in the box. The questions, I mean.
stages.
All right, and again, do you see any evidence of this stage in the United States now or anywhere else in the world? If so, explain. If not, just explain how you have not. All right, stage 8 is persecution. All right, so what are the elements of this stage? How can we prevent it? Take notes and be ready to answer the questions.
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventative measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Persecution is the 8th stage. During persecution, victims are identified and separated out because of their national, ethnic, racial, or religious identity. The victims' group's most basic human rights are systematically violated through extrajudicial killings, torture, and forced displacement. Death lists are also drawn up. In state-sponsored genocide, members of the victim groups may be forced to wear identifying symbols. Their property is often expropriated. Sometimes they are segregated into ghettos, deported to concentration camps, or confined to a famine-struck region and starved. They are deliberately deprived of resources such as water or food in order to slowly destroy the group. Programs are implemented to prevent procreation through forced sterilization or abortions. Children are forcibly taken from their parents. Genocidal massacres begin. All of these destructive acts are acts of genocide outlawed by the Genocide Convention. They are acts of genocide because they intentionally destroy part of a group. The perpetrators watch for whether such massacres are opposed by any effective international response. If there is no reaction, they realize they can get away with genocide. The perpetrators know that the UN regional organizations and the nations with powerful militaries will again be bystanders and permit another genocide. At this stage, a genocide emergency must be declared. If the political will of great powers, regional alliances, or the UN Security Council or the UN General Assembly can be mobilized, vigorous diplomacy, targeted economic sanctions, and even armed international intervention should be prepared. Assistance should be provided to the victim group to prepare for its self-defense. Humanitarian assistance should be organized by the UN and private relief groups for the inevitable tide of refugees to come. Follow Genocide Watch's 10 stages.
Okay. Please answer the questions in the chat box.
Campaign.
Again, do you see any evidence of this going on in the United States or anywhere else in the world? If so, explain. If not, explain that. All right, almost there. Stage 9, extermination. What are the elements of this stage? How is it preventable? Take notes while you watch.
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventive measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear, and stages may occur at the same time. Extermination is the 9th stage. Extermination begins and quickly becomes the mass killing legally called genocide. It is extermination to the killers because they do not believe their victims to be fully human. When genocide is sponsored by the state, armed forces often work with militias to do the killing. The goal of total genocides is to kill all members of the targeted group, but most genocides are genocides in part. All educated members of the targeted group might be murdered, like in Burundi in 1972. All men and boys of fighting age may be murdered, like in Srebrenica, Bosnia in 1995. All women and girls may be raped, as in Darfur or Myanmar. Mass rapes of women have become a characteristic of all modern genocides. Rape is used as a means to genetically alter and destroy the victim group. Sometimes the genocides result in revenge killings by groups against each other, creating the downward whirlpool-like cycle of bilateral genocide, as in Burundi. Destruction of cultural and religious property is employed to annihilate the group's existence from history, such as in Armenia from 1915 to 1922, or in ISIS-controlled areas from 2014 to 2018. Total war between nations or ethnic groups is inherently genocidal because it does not differentiate civilians from non-combatants. Carpet bombing, firebombing, bombing hospitals, and use of chemical or biological weapons are war crimes and also acts of genocide. Terrorism also does not differentiate civilians and combatants, and when intended to destroy members of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, is genocidal. Use of nuclear weapons is the ultimate act of genocide because it is consciously intended to destroy a substantial part of a national group. During active genocide, only rapid and overwhelming armed intervention can stop it. Real safe areas or refugee escape corridors should be established with heavily armed international protection. For armed interventions, a multilateral force authorized by the UN should intervene if politically possible. The Standing High Readiness Brigade, EU Rapid Response Force, or regional forces like NATO, ASEAN, ECOWAS should be authorized by the UN Security Council. The UN General Assembly may authorize action under the Uniting for Peace Resolution, General Assembly Resolution 377V, which has been used 13 times for such armed intervention. If the UN is paralyzed, regional alliances must act under Chapter 8 of the UN Charter. The international responsibility to protect transcends the narrow interests of individual nation-states. If strong nations will not provide troops to intervene directly, they should provide the airlift, equipment, and financial means necessary for regional states to intervene. Follow Genocide Watch's 10 Stages campaign on our Twitter.
Okay, please answer the questions. Do you see any evidence of this stage in the United States or anywhere around the world? Please explain, if you do or don't, the details. Okay, last one. All right, denial. All right, what are the elements of this stage and how can this be prevented?
Genocide develops in 10 stages that are predictable. At each stage of genocide, preventive measures can be used to stop it. The process is not linear and stages may occur at the same time. Denial is the 10th and final stage. Denial is the final stage that lasts throughout and always follows genocide. It is among the surest indicators of further genocidal massacres. The perpetrators of genocide dig up the mass graves, burn bodies, try to cover up the evidence of their crimes, and intimidate witnesses. They deny that they committed any crimes and often blame what happened on the victims. Acts of genocide are disguised as counterinsurgency if there's an ongoing armed conflict or civil war. Perpetrators block investigations of the crimes and continue to govern until driven from power by force or when they flee into exile. There they remain with impunity like Pol Pot or Idi Amin, unless they are captured and a tribunal is established to try them. During and after genocide, lawyers, diplomats, and others who oppose forceful action often deny that these crimes meet the definition of genocide. They utilize euphemisms like ethnic cleansing instead. They question whether intent to destroy a group can be proven, ignoring thousands of murders that surely indicate intent. They overlook deliberate imposition of conditions that destroy part of a group. They claim that only courts can determine whether there has been genocide, demanding proof beyond a reasonable doubt, when prevention only requires action based on compelling evidence. The best response to denial is punishment by an international tribunal or national courts. There, the evidence can be heard and the perpetrators punished. Tribunals like the Yugoslav, Rwanda, or Sierra Leone tribunals, the Tribunal to try the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, or the International Criminal Court may not deter the worst genocidal killers. But with the political will to arrest and prosecute them, some may be brought to justice. Local justice and truth commissions and public school education are also antidotes to denial. They may open ways to reconciliation and preventive education. Thank you for following Genocide Watch's.
Okay. Please answer the questions.
10
And again, do you see evidence of this stage in the United States now or anywhere else in the world? Please explain. All right, so now that we know a little bit more about the stages of genocide, why might it be important for us to learn about this incredibly difficult subject? Please answer that in the chat box. All right, so we're going to be applying these 10 stages to our research, and these are the kinds of things you'll be looking out for in your research and taking notes on. So if you have any holes in your notes, make sure to compare with a neighbor or a friend and get that done. You can also add stuff from your own research to these 10 stages as well as you look. Okay, it is a dark subject, and I appreciate you sticking through this, and I do think it's important. I hope you see it as well. All right, talk to you later, everybody. Bye-bye.